Hey, here we go. We're going live. This is Ivan Okuda. We're here at Roots Jiu-Jitsu in Pearl City, folks. Yeah, we're talking here with Jason from Ronin Bodyboards, Blake from Riat Bodyboards, and we're going to be talking about board design. And let's do a quick little intro first. How's it going?
All right, it's going good. Hey, I'm Jason from Ronin Bodyboards. You guys have probably seen some stuff, my face on YouTube channel or whatnot. I'm in Morro Bay, California, and I just shaped one-off, unique, one-of-a-kind custom boards. No models or anything like that, just one board for one customer. And then move to the next one. That's my deal. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, my name is Blake Arakawa. I shape for Riat Bodyboards. Pretty much custom boards, came out with a stock board. What I want to do is create a line of stock boards too, from my experience doing customs that are like almost like custom boards, and different from the store boards, and just introduce that. But pretty much doing custom boards now. So, and that's basically it for me.
All right. How's it going? My name is Ivan. I'm this old guy who's just trying to get back into it. And I am with Garage Builds. I build custom bodyboards, real terrible, and I get my ideas down, and once it works, I take it over to a professional. Brother Blake. So he's made me some crazy boards, and so we're here today to talk about design. And whoa, I'm looking at Facebook. I see somebody going live right now. Jordan, he has a question. Let's hear what his question is.
Hey, what's up, guys? Hey, so I got a question here. As someone who's been bodyboarding since the 80s and a big collector of vintage bodyboards, I appreciate, the vintage boards because it was a time where all the companies were just pumping out different unique boards as everyone was trying to figure out what works for everybody. A lot of sports, we saw the same thing. Let's say skateboarding, for example. Back in the 80s, you got the Pal Peralta, all these different fish-shaped boards. You can have your Tony Hawk board, your Mike McGill, your Cap. They're all different shapes as they're trying to kind of figure out what's going to work best. And then skating, the boards evolved kind of into the modern popsicle stick skateboard, where all the boards are just kind of the same, just different graphics on it. And I noticed that bodyboards kind of did the same too. They kind of went this direction where the boards went to this modern high-performance board. Different stamps, different logos, but it's meant for, guys that weigh a certain amount, guys who do a certain thing, they're launching, just a certain style of modern high-performance riding. But when I look at your guys' boards here, I see that you guys are kind of bringing back the unique shapes that are going to work for different spots and different riders. Not everyone's going to be skinny like they were in their 20s. People put on weight. People need more volume. People standardize on certain spots. The board that's going to ride at walls may not ride at pipe, If you look at surfing, surfer can have a fun board, a fish, a step-up board, a long board, your thruster. So a surfer's going to have a huge quiver, 10 boards in a quiver, but a bodyboarder might have, one or two boards, just one board just kind of for everything. So what I see when I look at your guys' boards is I see that instead of you guys fighting over the same pie, you guys are creating new pies to eat. So I'm curious to know what you guys think about that as far as what goes into your board designs, for rider specific or spot specific here. Because when I look at your guys' boards, that's kind of what I see.
Wow, that's so crazy. Jordan, you got to get over here to the studio right now. You have so much knowledge. You should be here, Jordan. Anyway, who wants to take this question? This is deep.
Go for it.
Well, Jordan touched on it a little bit. Back in the day, there were, I think, a lot of really cool, unique manufacturers, and there were more individual manufacturers in the past. And I think over time, a lot of the brands have been consolidated where they're only made in a couple of major factories, and I think that's what's maybe standardized things, where they start looking like every other board, maybe with just some different stamps, but they really have the same shape and same feel because they're all being made in the same factory. And that's kind of what where it's really cool that we're trying to the things that Blake and I do. We're creating different boards in different places using different techniques and different minds, where if they're all being made in the same factory, that's the same guys using the same machines and the same materials, where there's not a different take on how the board is made in those factories. They're kind of made all the same way, where Blake makes things different than I make. His rail angles might be a little bit different, and how he shapes tails are different. That's how we get. That's how you progress designs, is by having different people take different looks at how a board can be made. I think that's really important, you know, is to have more, the more manufacturers that are out there, they're going to do it their way, and that's what creates cool, unique designs.
I think the customers come up with a lot of crazy ideas too, like this guy. And that helps progress the sport and progress bodyboard design too. But it's because they have access to shapers like Jason and I and other shapers around the US and the globe, basically hand shapers that they can do one-off boards to experiment with. So that really helps
progress design.
Progress design and progress the sport. So yeah, did you guys want to talk about board design, the future? We touched a little on the past.
I think we want to do it all. And if there's anybody out there that has any kind of questions for us, feel free to fire away. We're here to try to answer anything that, you know.
Yeah. On Ivan Okuda's live, Ivan and Juvie, Instagram live. But if not, we'll go ahead. We have a theme for our discussion now, which is what, board design?
Yeah. We're definitely going to cover bottoms, because Blake and Jason has amazing bottoms. We're also going to be talking about tail designs, because you have a unique tail design. Blake does. I have this crazy non-functional design.
The way it works.
Rails. We got the steepness of the rails, rail shapes. I have a real question also with these guys with the rail. And one thing I like about this forum is that if you look at Jason's YouTube, when he does board design questions, this is the key for all of you out there, is to be educated and to know what you want when you come approach a custom builder, so you don't have to guess so much, because it gets pretty expensive to guess what you want. So that's why I make my own garage builds, and once I know it works for me, I hire some professional. But anyway, so today we're going to educate you guys on some board design. I'd like to start off with the bottoms. The bottom, who wants to share their crazy, intricate bottom first? Jason! Let's go, Jason!
Okay, well, I mean, a lot of people have seen, you know, if you're on the Instagram or Facebook, you've seen all the boards I've made, and you know, I think that some of the cool channel designs that I have are pretty unique. There's not really too many people making, you know, where you have one channel fading into two channels. Sure, there's a lot of quads out there that are just straight channels all the way through, but to take one channel and then fade it into a multi-channel system, and that's what surfing has done. Is you take a look at surfboard designs. You know, a lot of like standard shortboards, they're all single to double concaves, so that it goes from one channel to two channels, and they've refined that over the years. You know, so to take that concept and try to incorporate that into a bodyboard, instead of just having one channel all the way through, taking one channel and then making it go into two channels. I think that's some of the things that I've tried to do with some of my multi-channel systems. Like, you know, this is my most recent tombstone, my personal tombstone, and it's a 3 to 6 channel. So what it does is it starts off, you know, just flat through the front part of the nose, and I try to keep all this section flat because these are the area you want to spin on most of the time. You usually are shifting your weight forward to the nose, and you don't want anything bitey through this area. It just makes for flowier spins, right? And so what I'll do is the center channel here I will take up a little bit further, and then the outside two channels start just a little bit back, right behind where your elbows would be. So my channels on the outside are a little bit pulled back. So there's this one that will fade into two. And so my thinking about all this, and I've ridden these a ton now personally, so I have a firsthand experience, and I think that Blake and I, we're very lucky that we're riders on top of shapers, so we can go out and build these things and test them and know firsthand that they work or how they react and how they feel. So what I feel about these channels is that, you know, it collects water, and then as it flows out through the tail, it really starts to track and hold better than just a channel that runs straight through the board. And it also, as it comes through and then it hits this little bump when it starts to split the water, you get actually just a hair bit of lift in the tail as well. So what that does is it naturally will almost push up forward a little bit up, and that will, you know, we all know that when you lean forward, that's how you go fast, right? That's where the speed's at. So, but it also allows you to lean forward more on your board without side slipping. And so it's one of the big things about multi-channeled systems is that you can ride further up on the board and it'll hold and track without starting to side slip out. So that's one of the really cool, unique things about multi-channel systems, I think.
That was cool to hear, because I seen your design like 3 to 6, and I didn't really know what the concept was or your philosophy behind it. So that was really cool.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, I've experimented. You know, I've done all kinds of different ones. Like my previous tombstone was just it was a single double to quad channel, and I really like that. I've built quite a few of those on my tombstone models and standard boards too. That's the cool thing about custom is you can take all these cool, unique designs and mash them all up, and you can you can create boards that you just can't find on the market. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, this is just one bottom, you know, and then this is another one that I've been bringing to Hawaii. I think it's been this is my main Hawaii board I've brought the last like 5 trips to Hawaii. It's a little bit different, and it was kind of based off the Apollo or Opalo design that the guys were doing down in Australia, where you're going to take and you're going to bring these channels way up further, almost into the nose cut. In fact, the true Opalos actually the channel runs all the way through up into the nose. But then I felt that was going to be too bitey up here. Like I said, I still wanted it to be a little bit looser up here. And this board, I can still feel a little bit of this because I took the channel so far up. When I go to spin, it's a little bit more sticky, but boy, it sure tracks well, you know. And this is just a standard quad, but there's a little bit more going on in this board. Maybe we'll get into later, but it's a stepped bottom. So the center part of this board's an 1/8 inch thicker than the outside of the rails on the bottom. So you get a lot of mass and volume through the center part of this board for float and buoyancy, which I find I need more in Hawaii than I need at home in the colder waters in California. And so the same concept of this, it happens on the top. I know we were talking about channel bottoms, but I don't want to, but the same thing happens on the top of this. This whole center bump is an 1/8 inch thicker than the outside rail. So the center part of this board is actually a 1/4 inch thicker than the outside rails. And that, to me, it just, puts all that extra buoyancy underneath your chest for paddling and catching waves. But then the rails still feel thinner in my hand. It's like, this is still the same thickness of the boards I ride at homes because I like that thickness feel in my hands, right? But then I can get the extra volume without feeling like it's a thick board in my hands, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's kind of some of the concepts of theirs. We can get into talking about stringers and things like that later. But these are just 2 of the boards I brought with me this time to Hawaii. We kind of talking about channels.
So the bottom,
Yeah.
because it's raised right here in the middle, do you find it easier to go rail to rail?
Yeah, it does rock side to side pretty well. Yeah, transitions rail to rail pretty good. Yeah.
Nice.
Because it's like a V.
Yeah, well, it has a higher center point, so
Yes.
you're almost pivoting off that center thing.
And this holds you
Yeah.
in.
Right.
Yeah. Wait, tell us a little. Okay, that's your tail.
We'll get into
save that.
Yeah,
We'll save
we're
that.
talking.
We'll
Let's
save
see what
that.
channels. Go ahead, and then maybe we'll talk about a couple of the channel bottoms you have.
Okay, yeah. So it's pretty cool because a lot of our concepts, it's almost identical, our philosophies. So I just want to share this one. This is the Ignite bottom that I introduced a few weeks ago. And it's basically a single concave, but it has like what I call a flat channel. And it does get softer up here. It's brought in, so it's flat. Like Jason was saying, how you want it softer or you want it more neutral to do spinners. You don't want it to grab, especially too high on the board, especially when it gets critical and hollow. You don't want the board to bite by your elbow and throw your tail out. So I softened it up here and I created a channel of here to bring in the water. And then the major part about it is that it gets narrow. It's not same the way through it. It's brought in and it creates a Venturi effect. So you guys can look it up, but what it basically does, it creates velocity and speed. It forces the water to gain momentum. And you can feel it when you ride on the board, like prone. When you're riding, you can feel the water just rushing under your body like a jet turbine engine. And the cool part about it is that it also holds super good. Like these flat channels, they hold. I created with an edge, a little more than here sometimes, but yeah, it's crazy speed but crazy hold. And basically, my philosophy behind it is, we as bodyboarders, like the two things we kind of struggle with or always want in a bodyboard is more speed. You know, they call us dick draggers and things like that. From the perspective of surfers, they think we're slower, but we're places like pipe and stuff like that, we can fly and we can take off deeper. But one thing I noticed we always strive for and want is more speed in our bodyboards and control. You know, we don't have a problem with maneuverability doing 360s, but a lot of times we might slide out. So it's speed and control, and this was my answer to that, was to create more speed and more control. So that's basically it for this one. It's great for prone and front side drop knee. Backside, I actually like it too, but I created something else for that, and it has the same concept, but the only difference is it has a V in the tail, and the tail it has the like a variation of the delta tail that Mike Stewart created. This one's flat or even, but this V is only about 5 inches long. Like, you don't need it, I found you don't need it to be too long. The longer it is, the more drag it creates. But this back here is just to create a rail to rail transition to make it more fluent. But the main component is this, the Ignite bottom, the single concave. And this just adds a little more ease, rail to rail, and maneuverability. And it also helps split the water if it's choppy or windy. So this board is my prototype for big waves, North Shore waves, choppy waves, prone and drop knee. This is like my hybrid board / new model I want to come out with later called the Dragon Slayer. But I was gonna save this and not share it, but I just figured I'd share it as just to show a variation of that, what I'm working on for the future. And it's the same principles as Jason's, just in a different style.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
It's your take on a multi-channel system, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it.
Now, is this the board you used yesterday at Leftovers? Really?
Yeah.
It was, right?
Yeah.
Dudes, if I had a GoPro, you should have seen it. Set wave out at Leftovers. We're all inside, a bunch of us guys, and we see Blake taking off, getting up like Krip Nakama, so smooth. The wave just right above his head. He gets up, sets his rail. No holding rail, nothing, just bottom turns right around it. And I'm looking, this wall is forming. I go, what's he gonna do? Snap! Snaps under it. And he gets around, oh man, he has to go around this section now because the wave broke. We went around this section, and I'm like, oh, is he gonna pop up? He popped up at the end. Perfection. Their style, second to none. Curriculum, they're twins. It was that board.
It was the board.
Was the board not you?
It might have something to do with the rider,
Yeah,
too, just a
I
little
think
bit.
so.
No, there's 3 factors, right? There's the board, the rider, and the wave, right? All 3 are 33%. I've touched on this in the
Let's
past.
get deep with that. I have my own philosophies too, but yeah.
But 33% rule is what I call it. The 33% rider, 33% board, and 33% wave. All 3 factor in. They're all important. And then there's, what is that? That adds up to 99%, right? So then you have the mystery 1%.
Ooh, what is that?
That it's a mystery.
There's your answer.
It's
You're not
the
gonna
mystery
share it, or
1%. It's the little magical thing that hangs out there that makes something special, right? But all 3 of those things are equally important. You know, you have to have at least 2 of the 3 in most scenarios to have a positive situation.
To have that magic element, that magic board, that magic experience where everything kind of just comes together.
Yeah, but all 3 of those things are important. You know, you can only, you can have a great, you can't, we touched a little bit on speed, right? So I also have some other ideas about speed and control. So speed, I feel, comes from the wave initially. Right? You can't go fast on a 1-foot wave. Right? But you can go fast on a 10-foot wave, right? Because it has more energy and it's going to push you faster and it's going to be steeper, so you're going to have a chance to go faster because the wave has energy. So initially all the speed comes from the wave. And then after that it's about how do the board and the rider respond to the energy that the wave provides. And that's how things can get better, right? If you have a rider with more skill, or you have a board that has more control, okay? So the more control a board has, the faster you can go without losing control.
By
so
harnessing the power of the
exactly.
speed
So
of the
as soon
wave.
as you lose control, you have to sacrifice speed to regain control, right?
Right.
So the more control a board has, the faster you can go, right? Without losing control.
Yeah, because you need control to be in position of the wave. You can't be on the bottom all the time. You gotta get up, get down.
Yeah, so you really have to have the more details and things you can put into a board that provide more control for the rider, the faster the board will be able to go without losing control.
Yeah.
That's a huge one for me.
That's why I always post or share on my description to my customers is I want to make a board that works for you, the waves you ride, and what you want to do, and for you personally, so it incorporates those 3 elements. And I wanted to share kind of my shaping philosophy and how I like to create the magic board for my customers. It's a 1/3 rule too, and it's pretty cool, like how we kind of think the same. For me, it's incorporating when I shape or when I talk to the customer, is incorporating speed, control, and maneuverability. Like Jason said, there's a lot of times we just want speed. We want speed, we want the board to go fast. But when we just focus on that, then we lose maneuverability or we lose control. Like if the board is just flying and we can't turn the thing, then you get the speed, but you don't get that magic ride and experience with the wave where everything's working together. So that's my philosophy as a shaper. And I wanted to share it with you guys. So as customers, you can think about that when you buy any board, whether it's a stock board or if you come to us to create your magic board, is try and think of those things and not just focus on one. And us as shapers can help you balance all of those 3 things. Because say if all you know is you want speed, we can kind of help you bring in more control, more maneuverability to that board. And that's my philosophy.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
On the mentioning the channels at the bottom of your board, you're talking about stickiness, tracking. I rode this the Meerkat board. I was using my flat bottom board. It was regulars, and then when I jumped on this Meerkat at a nice 2-foot quartz, I got up and I was starting flying. I was like, whoa, I can tell the distance. All of my, whoa, flying. I said, oh yeah, cut back. No, it went straight. What? And I looked at the bottom and it had that channel with all those little other channels, but it seemed to have the channel all the way to the rail. And so that's when I talked to Blake and we came up with this design. It's pretty much exactly what he did. I copied it.
No, but
this one has a little step here.
Yeah, you did like a
North Shore bottom
step thing.
That guy Jake, that guy
it's almost like a wing
Facebook
bottom.
world knows what the North Shore bottom had. It had this crazy little rise, and then
the Jack the Ripper Lindholm.
You had that board.
Yikes! Yeah.
And that inspired me to create this. So I like what you're saying about the stickiness. So I figured, what if we made a channel concave bottom that didn't go to the edge, and just a little bit away from it? Maybe it wouldn't be that sticky. And so I found that it worked. It actually doesn't have that much sticky. Or maybe it just needs more concave. I don't know. But I like that when he came out his. I wanted to put that North Shore Jack Lindholm idea because that's Jack. Jack Stans, man, that's the man. He had an idea, he put it in, I want to follow through. And so what I asked Blake to do is make that concave bottom, make this raised bottom.
Actually, it's flat.
Yeah, it's actually flat.
But this is flat and then this is knocked down.
It gets raised because this is low. So this actually acts like a raised bottom without that obstruction and water flow right here.
Yeah, and because I'm a drop knee rider, I really don't want my board to be completely flat. I want my board to have tail rocker because I'm following what surfers believe in. They want to have rocker for maneuverability. And so what Blake did was, it's not only flat over here, but it starts to get rocker, so it gets deeper through the tail, so raises, like what Blake said, it raises this raise. So it acts kind of like a skag, this bottom. And so I'm not going to play around anymore. I'm going to order Blake's design that, what do you call that? Ignite. I want that ignite. I want that diamond thing, because this was just an experimental and it just really works. So this was.
So yeah, tell us, I want to know how it works. Like, I saw you at Leftovers the other day killing it, backside. It looked super smooth. It looked like this peg was holding.
This is a tail conversation, but the bottom.
Okay.
We're gonna get to that, but this bottom. Okay. We're talking about control. We're talking about speed. I myself, I'm not really into speed as much because I'm not trying to race to the shoulder. I'm trying to be like a surfer, like Tom Curran, bottom turn, top to bottom. So I want that speed when I want it. And so what this board did, I noticed, it could be because of the tail, we'll get into that. But there's a wave that I have on video recently that I got up, I went straight, and I was so slow. I was like, whoa, what's going on? I'm not moving. But once I went to the rail, boom, and I took off. And so the bottom, and maybe it was the tail, but my magic board is pretty close to this. That I'm able to be slow when I want to, but when I want to take off, I put it on rail, ooh, it's gone. And it holds so good.
Oh, cool.
And we're going to get into it also, but when I started bodyboarding 2 years ago, it was Ryan that hooked me up with Vector System because I was sliding all over the place. And then when he introduced me to the Vector System, I got on it, I was like, oh, I never wasted a wave ever again. It had so much control for the drop knee, and in 2 years, I'm at this level today. I would never be at this level without vectors. Truly, I would still be sliding out trying to hold my rail, but you know, now because of vectors, I'm at the level right now. So I encourage any of you drop knee riders out there that are struggling with holding your rail. If you want to excel quickly, get into the vector system, and then once you have the basics, like how I now have the basics, you can let go of the vectors, but it's an amazing system. And
well, the beauty of the vectors, because you've installed plugs, and I obviously do quite a bit of that too, but they're FCS plugs, and you can ride your board with or without skegs. So it's good. It's always good to have the option to put them in or not, you know, depending on the conditions or how you want to ride that day. It's good to have options. Yeah. And different plug placements. I noticed you have a board that we can get into that a little bit. But
Show them that.
yeah, show.
yeah, let's talk. Since we're on the bottom, let's talk bottoms. Let's stay on the bottoms.
This thing, wow.
Here it is, folks.
The most plugs ever in a board.
9 plugs, folks.
I've done some fives and stuff, but boy, this is a whole other level.
All right, folks, I'd like to introduce you to the Vector Quad system. Ryan was talking about making a quad, and I'm like, dude, I want to help. I want to be a part of this. And so, again, this comes with the tail design, but we'll get into that also. But the quad, this thing is crazy that I used it this summer on little 1 foot waves. And this quad, it really picks up speed. It really gets you driving and going, and with hold.
No side slip. It just holds and tracks. That's the beauty of the vectors. There's no side slip. You're just going to hold and track. But they're still maneuverable, right? You can still turn and throw water and move the board around it. A lot of people think I'm going to put these on and I'm going to lose all the maneuverability.
No.
No.
And so the vectors are separated, so it's going to create drive. If you want maneuverability, then you just got to pull them closer. And when you put these two together closer, it almost acts as just a twin fin, which has this crazy maneuverability and really tail slides. So it's kind of, you got to really play. And I did. I was separating them.
I noticed this board's all just straight across. There's no offset depending on stance, right? So, I mean, but you still have the ability with this setup to do offsets if you want. That's the beauty of this whole setup is, and having multiple plugs because most of the vectors are single plug fins, right? There is a double, the VDs, but these ones are great because you can play around with all these different positions and fin combinations and change the feel of how it feels.
There's so much you can do with this board.
It's crazy. The options you can do with this is
done
insane.
it all. Twin fin, quad, thruster. And,
I know. I built a thruster, but I'm basically a prone rider. But I built myself a prone vector board way back, and it was one of the very first thrusters I built. It was 2 in 1. So there's just 5 plugs. And I tried all the different fin combinations and all this stuff, and I, like I said, I'm basically just a prone rider, and I find just for me in prone riding that I like just the one single fin right in the back for prone riding. It had just enough bite in the tail, and I was still, and then I could get the tail out and still spin. Because you just got to get that lean forward and get that fin to release, and then you could still spin with just a single fin here. But boy, you go into a bottom turn and you can just drive off that fin like crazy. It's a really fun feel for prone riding. But once I'm prone riding and I had my fins up here, for me I could feel just a little bit of drag, and I lost a little bit of maneuverability. But that might have been just with the fin placements, I think. Maybe they needed to be a little bit forward, closer to my elbows or something, maybe to be able to pivot off of them a little bit for maneuverability, and they might have been a little bit too far back. It's all lessons and experiments. That's what all this custom stuff's about.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah.
Yep.
My preference is a single fin, way up here. I took this out at Macau at a nice 3 to 5, a nice large wave, and it created enough drag for me to slow down, because if I didn't have this, I'd be flying down the line now, would be out of control. So having vectors does create drag, but it's a positive thing in certain situations.
Well, I think it really helps when you get into powerful waves. When, like I said, it gets back to the speed comes from the wave. So if you're going really fast on a wave, you're not going to notice that little bit of drag. But if you're riding a slower, softer wave, that's when you're really going to feel that drag on the fin. But then you don't necessarily need it for the hold on a smaller wave.
Yeah. But what this does do for me, real quick, in town, I was using it on a little 2-foot or 3-foot wave at Quartz. The single fin, maneuverability.
And this is for drop me, right?
For drop me. That's all I do. I don't really know how to.
Don't
Who does that anyway?
Don't lie. That's your
Beginner.
secret.
But yeah, for drop me up high, the pivot point becomes really loose and hold. And you get that look like, I have the video, wow, it looks like I'm surfing. But you know, that's just a learning process.
Interesting.
What you got there, Blake?
No, did you, for Prone, did you play with the placement up and down, or you just had it
I
like
just had a single one and it was closer to the tail. It was on a crescent. It was actually on a 3 to 6 scallop tail, so like my normal tails that I would ride on my normal home boards. But it's just about 3 inches up from the tail of a crescent, so it wasn't too far up into the board. It was a little closer to the tail.
Cool. Yeah. So tell us about the tail, this tail.
Do we go into tails now? Shall we go
I think
into
we
tails?
should.
Sure, let's get into tail talk.
Yeah. Okay, keep jumping into tails. The reason why I like this tail, if you go back to the square tail, what are the benefits of a square tail, would you say, for prone or drop me?
Speed. A square tail is the original bodyboard tail.
Yeah!
All the OG Moreys, they're all square tail, the 139s and all the old school Moreys, the vintage ones, they're all square tails, and that's how even the original kit Morey, I believe, was a square tail as well.
Too were pretty square.
And then, as I understand it, the second tail was a full crescent.
Oh, really?
Okay, so this knowledge was passed on to me by Buzz, who was the owner of Tubes. That's where I learned to shape. So what happened is after that they came out with the square tail, but they're fast, but they're really loose, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing, is like
sacrificing the control.
Speed and control again, right? So now it's going fast, but we don't have any control.
Like,
So that's when they started doing all the bolt-in fins on the old Moreys, right?
Yeah, and
the
turbos.
So that's how they try. Okay, that was the initial thing. Then you're drawing from the surfboard ideas. Okay, let's put skegs on the bottom, and that'll provide the hold and control that we need. And then, okay, but then then you lose some maneuverability, right?
Yeah.
So then, okay, let's get rid of the fins, and now what would be the next tail that would hold really well? And then going back to surfboards again, the crescent-y tails that were on surfboards. And I have a philosophy that really it is the best. Any type of a full crescent-y tail that runs through, that exits to a point like this versus a clip. Okay, so the Morey did a full crescent on some really early Morey boards, and he shipped those boards all out to the surf shops and everything. And then what they did was they stored them all in their tails like this.
Yeah.
And then you ever seen anybody in the parking lot, or anybody who doesn't know about boards? They're always doing this, right?
Watch out.
So what happens is you end up with all these tail corner D-lambs, and what happened was the surf shops ended up sending back all the boards to Morey, and there was all these tail corner D-lambs, right? So what he did was he just took and chopped those off, and then all of a sudden it became the clip crescent, and that became the industry standard. And now, I mean, you think about how long and how many boards have been made with a clip crescent tail, right?
Yeah.
And basically what that tail was designed for was durability, not performance. Okay, I still feel any board that exits into a point like this is going to provide more hold and bite on the wave face.
Yeah.
And it'll have less side slip. Even when you're going through a bottom turn, anything like that, any kind of turns, a board that exits into a point like this, even a back tail, Even though a bat has that bump through here, it still has the point out here. I mean, you'll see some bats that have a little clip on them as well. But I think anything that has a point just has a better bite and hold on it.
Yeah.
So, and then obviously from then on, you know, it's just bat tails kind of came in, and then I think that it was bat and crescents for a very, very long time.
Yep.
Right?
I'm curious about that bat tail. The prone riders using bat for lift. Does it add lift? Because I've seen flat bottom boards with the bat tail, so it creates lift somehow.
Yeah, maybe you throw in on.
Yeah, I want to
okay.
get in on that because I love bat tails for prone, and then I use it for drop knee. But the delta tail that Mike Stewart made with the point is so good for drop knee because it has the benefits of the bat tail for prone. And so going into the bat tail shape like this is the delta, but and I like to call it the dragon tail, but it basically, the reason I love it is because it creates volume, it creates more squirt and speed off the bottom turn. And like Jason said, if you have the points on the tip, it balances that speed with bite and hold, and it just adds way more speed to the board. And it also it doesn't slide. Like what I try to tell people is, usually when they try a bat tail, they get it the same size as their prone crescent tail, and they start side slipping and they lose control, and they say, oh, it's junk because it just too loose. But I say go an inch shorter because this part will push your pelvis back anyway. So go an inch shorter and you get all that speed, all that maneuverability, and then you get control to those magic 3 things. So try bat tail. If you like the crescent feel, Hub does a flat bat, and that's like a happy medium between a bat and a crescent, but you get more benefits off of bat tail. Just go an inch shorter, and I promise you'll pretty much love it. The pivot point's a little different. It's not so much on the rail, this rail, and this rail. It's more in the center line. So you can just go woo, and it won't slide out. It's just, it comes to a point in the middle, and it stabilizes the board, and you can pivot off that center point of the bat tail. And you can just do carves, release, do 360s, so smooth. So that's my take on the bat tail.
And that's what I'm curious, because when we're using vectors, I'm using it for control, but without it, you need these crescents, you need these bats. And so when Ryan was saying, oh, I want to make a quad, I was thinking, I have that V-tail. I said, well, the V-tail is probably holding just like a swallowtail on a surfboard, probably has good bite. I want to make it go looser, because if you have a quad, you need to have something that's out of control.
Yeah.
And so when I went with a flat
Diamond.
tail. Yeah,
Actually,
diamond tail. It's a
it's a
little
little
tail.
diamond.
Yeah, it's a real slide. The reason why I went so slight, because I wanted to save the vector. But I should have went true vector. I should have went true diamond and cut this off. And so I went diamond and I went clip, because that's what Ryan is promoting, that clip tail. But I wanted to go the same concept what you guys are talking about, lift. And so I noticed that with this tail, this board is out of control with just two. With just the two basic vectors, like the standard, it's out of control.
Yeah, that might be partly because of these reverse clips you have. It tends to get a little bit loose. It's almost like a square tail, but then it's even more loose on those outside corners.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
I always say this is really good for prone, the Y-fly, with this clip. But I tried it a long time ago for drop knee on one of my personal boards, and it created a weird pivot point when I went to bottom turn that threw me off. And I wrote it one session. I said, that's it. I don't like it.
But what this might do is it might add some maneuverability because you're shortening the rail length, right?
Yes,
it does.
So that might be a little bit turny and pivoty off the tail just because your rail line is getting shorter.
Yeah. And that was my idea for the quad, is to not go with the basic design that we're going with, the vector's going with. I'm going with the diamond tail with the clip, supporting Ryan's idea. And it works amazing that it has so much lift, and you need these to keep you at
To
home.
work with all this.
To add the control.
Yeah.
So you don't go out, you don't lose
You don't
control,
slide
and then you have to sacrifice speed for control,
Yes,
right?
yes. So if Ryan, if you're going to do a quad, dude, try this board out with the diamond tail clip. I think you'll be really impressed with it.
So yeah, I mean, getting back to tail design just a little bit, and I think this is something that I can really see going forward in the future. For so long, you know, a lot of manufacturers were just doing standard channels and clip crescent tails, right? It's the industry standard. It's been that way for a lot of time. But there's no cohesiveness between the channel design and the tail design, and I think that's really what some of my boards provide, and also yours too. I've seen a few, but. You know, when I started developing, you can see it a little bit on this. This one is it's a quad channel, but it has a 4 scallop here, right?
Yeah, tell us about the scallops.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it all came from a bat tail design originally, and but one of my things about a bat tail. Let me see this one real quick. So the bat tail for me, as a prone rider, I always really liked how. A traditional bat, you can kind of lock your hips into those spots, you know? It really kind of locked yourself in, but then it always had this big, and I've seen you knock this down, which I really like, but it always had this big bump right here, right? Yeah. So one of my first trips over to Hawaii, I'd made myself, it was when I was still at Tubes, I made myself, it was a gull wing tail, which is a version of a bat tail, right? It's just a little bit more laid back into the board. And it's a little more curvy instead of like a little bit harder angles in the tail. But I noticed that this bump just was, for a lack of a better term, just a ball cruncher. As a prone rider, you go up and blast an air and then you land, and that it just crushes you, and it just cripples you on the landing sometimes, right?
That's why I shave it down.
Okay, so what I did was I was like, okay, well I have this scoop and then it comes back out for the bat tail, right? You have the scoop and then it comes back out for the bat tail. I was like, well, what if I just take and cut that scoop out? And now I got 1 scoop, 2 scoops, 3 scoops. And that was some of the very original scallop tails that I made when I was still at Tubes. There was a few Tubes boards out there that were custom made, and some of my personal Tubes when I was starting to get in and developing the ideas.
Oh, cool.
And I was just like, okay, well just cut that, instead of having that big bump here, just cut it out with another crescent. And so that's how I kind of came up with the initial 3 scallop design. And once I did that, I was like, and then I went to the bottom side of the board, and I'm like, okay, I was right. All my old Tubes boards were all V-tails and just big single concaves. Back in the day, all my old Tubes custom boards were all V-tails, single concaves. And then Mez came over to the Tubes factory and he bought one of the really early Ben Player quads, and I got to see that, and I was like, whoa, that's cool. But it was just a clip crescent, but it had the full quad bottom, and I looked at it, I was like, oh, well, it's just a big single concave with ribs through it, right? That's all it is. It's the same concept, but what it does is that the ribs add more tracking to the bottom. So you still get the rail bite because of the single concave, but all these ribs, when you're driving and moving forward, it's going to track your direction, right? But then there was no cohesiveness between all this channel system and then the tail design. It was just a clip crescent tail, and those ribs just exited out of the clip crescent tail in a very weird fashion. There was no thought between this and this and having them work together. Yeah. So what I did when I did the 3 scallop, what I did was I was like, oh, well, what if I do a 3 channel and then put those ribs right on where the points happen? And then, let me get this back to you for a second. So that's how I mean, this one kind of has still the same philosophy. If you look at this, it's a quad channel, but these ribs exit out right at the scallop points, right? So now this rib is right on where the point of the scallop's at. And like I said, initially these were all just three scoops, but then as I started doing quads, I was like, well, or the 3 to 6s, I was like, oh, well, I could just start scooping out between all the channels. And then what that does is you have more of a cohesive design with how the water sheds off the tail and the actual tail design. They work together as a system versus something that's just, oh, we'll put this on that and this on that, and it works together, right? So that's a big thing for me, is having a cohesiveness between the channel design and the tail design, so they kind of work together. Oh, cool. And this because of you. And I look at this and I'm like, oh, this is the same thing. You look at how this comes out, and it's the same thing.
Because of your video, your inspiration is this, to make a purposeful tail.
Yeah.
YouTube, you gotta check out his YouTube video, I'm telling you!
Yeah, I've done some, what I call the Boog chats. I do live stream chats on the YouTube channel every once in a while, and I'll take questions and pull out some of my personal boards. And I pretty much have all my Ronin boards documented. If you go through all those from the very first Ronin 1 till my 500 board, I have them all. I pull them out and talk about the evolution of how I went from this board design to that board design to that board design, yeah. And there's even some of my, I think actually I even pulled out some of my older tubes boards are in there too.
Yeah,
So,
or
yeah.
your vintage boards.
Yeah, well, they're not really vintage, you know. I didn't really start bodyboarding until the early 2000s, so I kind of missed all of the craze of the 80s and 90s. Yeah, I didn't even really, I never caught a wave until 2002.
Oh, cool. Because you used to snowboard before, was it?
Yeah, I snowboarded and skateboarded all through my youth.
Cool.
Yeah. So I did all that, and you know, but the problem was I blew out both of my knees, right? And skateboarding and snowboarding, both my knees have been operated on. So I knew if I was once I moved to the coast, I was like, oh man, I really want to get into riding waves, but I knew the deep squat motions and all the skateboarding and the airs and the ramps and things that I'd be wanting to attack the lip and doing airs, and I was only going to do more damage to my knees, and that's what gravitated me towards bodyboarding. I knew I could just lay down and I'm not going to do damage to my knees.
You get barreled.
That means I could ride, I could surf and catch waves for a very long time.
It's always head high.
It's always overhead. It's always overhead.
Always overhead.
Yeah.
So tell us about your bottom. And
Yeah. So you're mentioning how the tail feels good around your hip. Try this board. Stand up and put that around your hip.
Oh yeah, I can see it definitely locking you into these corners, right? But then once you get I don't have one of my most of my boards, my prone boards at home, and I've done, like I said, this board is 3 years old, and I wanted to experiment with a quad design on it, but most of my boards at home are the same, basically the same shape, but it has a 3 to 6 bottom on it. And what the 3 to 6 bottom does is it has a 3 to 6 channel, but then the tail also, I wish I had one here to show and tail, but the 3 to 6 is, you get a scoop here, a scoop here, and a scoop here on the top. 3 scoops on the top, but then that fades to 6 on the bottom, kind of like that one, right?
Oh.
And that 3 scoop, it
that.
does the same thing. It really locks your hips into those spots. And then getting back to the cohesive design for me is that if you look at the deck contours on this and how they fade out through the tail, this line also will be part of the scoop, right?
Yeah.
Right? So on most of them, this one just has like a full crescent to a quad scallop. So it's like full crescent on the top to quad scallop, which just makes this really comfortable for the rider, but you still slip and slide around the tail a little bit in the prone situation on this. This helped the deepened, I know we're getting into some contour talk here, but this really helps lock your hip into the board so you don't slip and slide. But then once if I scalloped out the top of this even more, it locks your hips into the board so you don't slip and slide around the tail like you would a full crescent or a clip crescent, because it's usually just a big slippy slidey mess here, right? When you can get lip comes over and gets you, and I've been blasted off the side of my board, right? And just being able to have a tail that locks the rider into the top side, right? So that's the thing is, on the bottom we got channels that work with all the scallops, but on the top side, this starts to work with the rider, right? The rider the top needs to be comfortable for the rider, and the bottom needs to work with all the hydrodynamics, right?
Yeah.
That's big for me. It's like I want this to be have as much control as possible on the deck side for the rider, and I want as much control on the bottom. The more control, the faster you go.
That's a good point about the different aspects. The top works for the rider, the bottom works with the
water.
surface of the wave.
Yeah.
The water. And those hip grooves also work for drop knee too, like shin grooves.
Sure, yeah. We can do all kinds of cool raised rails and knee grooves and all that stuff for drop knee riders, definitely, yeah.
I gotta say, one thing I mentioned that I heard you guys talking about the tails is that the crescent and the bat tail has the speed and control. So guys were laughing about this one because they said, "Hey, what's that? Is that a table legs?" You had a bunch of table legs on your side. Like, yeah, it is table legs. But so I'm like I said, I don't really care for the speed right away. I want control. And so what this tail does, it gives crazy control, but it creates drag. But drag is good. In certain situations, drag is good. And so I encourage you guys to, I hope you see each other on the North Shore. I want to try your board, and you can try my board, and you can see what these tails do. Because I want to drop you.
We should have a Boog fest.
Yeah, I want to drop you.
Yeah, I've jumped up on knee on this board. On this trip, I've already been on the knee on this board. Yeah.
So definitely want to get onto that. And so yeah, so this tail is, I think it's You guys got perfect tails. Mine is just being creative and trying to figure out how extreme can I go.
That's how you learn.
That's how things evolve. You
Yeah.
have to. There's no evolution without experimentation, right?
And going from one extreme to the other. Like how you said, you went from square tail and Morey Boogies to the full crescent.
But then that led to defects because of things. And then what was the
Yeah.
solution to solve that?
So you kind of find a middle ground. You find what works and what balances out.
So my end solution, I'm gonna have one on my back side and just have a basic, maybe a crescent tail, full crescent on my front side, because this is gonna have crazy hold on my back side, and then I'll be able to throw the tail, to slide, because this thing, you can't, there's no tail slide on this tail for some reason. So I'll eliminate one so I can create a tail slide on either front side or back side.
That's what's cool is I think there's a lot to explore with asymmetrical design with drop knee riding. Like prone riding, prone riding, but drop knee. There's something there.
There's so much you can do for drop knee boards.
Because you don't ride both rails the same way when you drop knee because of your pivot points, right?
Yeah.
That's with the offset fins and skegs sometimes with depending on stance specific stuff.
Yeah.
But the rail design also can change because your pivot points are different on your, whether you're on your foot or you're on your knee. Those are in different spots. So you usually want your pivot spots right about where those points are at, right? So that's where you play with where the wide point lands on the board with asymmetrical design.
Yeah.
Asymmetrical.
And
Blake made this one.
Backside, sometimes shorter, front side usually longer rail design. You can get on my Instagram, there's quite a few boards I've made that are asymmetrical where the backside rail is an inch to 2 inch shorter than the front side rail.
It's fun. There's so much you can do. I think that's a topic for another day.
I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do it. I like your idea. I like shortening the backside rail, so I'm gonna do that with this square and have a crescent tail over here. My wide point's actually up by the elbow, and my wide point's actually down on the knee. This is asymmetric. What's that? What you saying? All right. So,
are we getting off topic? Is there any questions over there? We got anything we could do? Kind of maybe talk with, interact with some people, maybe?
Are we doing on time?
I do see a question actually.
Awesome. Let's go.
So Paul Sunshin's asking, can you put a deck skin on an existing one to make the board thicker?
yeah.
Yes,
You put a puzzle. You can put a puzzle board. I made a puzzle board.
The tricky part about that is how do you resolve it and finish it off once you get the skin on? Are you gonna roll that skin over the chine, or are you just gonna try to cut it off and then make it blend in? But it's doable, yeah.
It's doable, but then if the board is bowed or reverse rocker, then it's hard to get it flat. If you sand it down, if you have a drum sander, it'll cut the middle thickness down. Then there's a wax.
But I think he's talking about putting a deck skin right over another deck skin, right?
Yeah. But
so you're not going to sand anything off, right? You
just to prep it because the wax.
True.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
Or
you could hand sand it. You could hand sand it.
But is it possible? Yes, because what you got is the same. That's the thing about bodyboarding and construction is you need the same type of materials to bond together. You know about this too.
Yeah.
Dissimilar materials are the problem with bodyboards because you go with polypro core and you got polyethylene skins. And you can go get into some of my YouTube videos and I explain a lot of this stuff through the Boog chats about the dissimilar materials and how we overcome that as shapers to be able to put boards together.
Yeah. It's technical.
It is. It's a lot more technical than I think people realize.
Yeah.
It's harder to build a bodyboard than it is a surfboard. I've always said that.
Unless you're like me at Garage Builds, here we put a rubber puzzle mat for the babies. You know that little baby kids?
Yeah.
I just grinded down my deck down to no wax and Gorilla glued on some puzzle mat. And it came out to be 2.5 inches thick, and the board's still together. The deck never fell off. But that's at the Garage Build. That's not recommended.
So you use Gorilla Glue, and you can also use contact cement. Work good, huh?
Yeah. Contact cement. That's how they did a lot of the old boards before the heat lamination came into play. Is that they just glued decks to cores.
There's kits. There's make your own bodyboard kits.
Right.
So,
How about rails? You guys want to talk about rails?
Sure.
So here's my question for you guys. My rails. I'll start with this board. I noticed you guys just talking about thickness, rails. This board had a raised thumb, kind of like what that one was. And so this board is 2 1/8 inch, and it had that thumb rail, which made it like 2 1/4 all of a sudden.
Just out on the rail,
Just
right?
on the rail.
Yeah. Usually it's about an 1/8 inch. It comes up on the outside.
Yeah.
That's those pieces. Yeah.
And so I'm a drop knee rider, and I'm thinking I want my rails to be thin. I want to be able, because I learned from Blake that thin you can cut into the wave and hold. So I just shaved it down, man, shaved it down. So I was thinking, rail-wise, does it matter It doesn't matter to have this. Does it have to have a chine that's sharp? Or can we go with rounded like a surfboard?
Well,
Benefits.
well, yeah, how rails are finished off. So you put the pieces on, and then that's the difference between how you do it and how I do it. I think that's awesome that the people have different takes on how rails should be finished off.
And I think it has to do with the waves too. Like in Hawaii, it's like so powerful and steep that I prefer sharper rails.
I do too. Well, I have systems that basically go from rounded to sharp out the tail, right? So you can look at this board, and I really soften up this bottom edge right through here. I noticed that you do some of that too with how you finish some stuff off. But then once it starts getting, because I don't want anything bitey up in the front part of my nose. Everything is rounder and softer up through the front, but as it goes back, it gets sharper. And you can see on this board, it even channels. I even have little like lightly channeled rail faces on this board. I just think that it needs to be round to sharp. Nice and soft in the front and bitey in the back.
Like a surfboard.
Exactly. That's where it all comes from, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kind of like how this
Severson.
board is.
You don't have...
Like this is rounded, like like I was just gonna say Ben Severson has his own theory.
Or yeah, I mean his are like one piece rails all the way around. And I've done some of those as well, yeah. Some one piece rail designs. And they feel great. I have a regular prone board at home that's very similar to this one, but it's 3-6 that has rounded one piece rails, and I love it. It's basically my number 2 board.
I don't know why it didn't catch on in the industry.
Because it's really, I don't know, have you done any of those?
Yeah, I'm doing them now.
They're difficult to do as far as construction goes. It's not an easy build to get those things. And the skins will kink, especially some of the moderns. If you look at that, some of the older bin boards, they use thinner skins for the rail pieces, and it makes the skins are just easier to manipulate to all the round curves and stuff. The thicker the skin gets, the more it wants to kink when you're trying to get it into all the curves, right?
Yeah.
Those kinks are the death of a rail.
That's probably why it didn't catch then.
Well, they're harder to build, and I think when you have to produce 500 or 1,000 of these boards, you're talking about time, and it costs more, and there's more man hours to be able to build that versus traditional rail designs. Yeah.
So one thing we did with this was we rounded the rail, and that's what you can do is you can actually shave your own rails round, and then wet glove it. So you get a glove, a towel. You soak it wet, grab your heat gun, and just follow it and smoothen it out. But you can make your own rounded rails like Ivan did. How do you like that?
I love these rounded rails. Take a look at this one.
Yeah, nice and soft all the way through. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. The rounded rail feel like this. It's so flowy in the water, and you still have bite. It still holds. It's not like you're losing anything as far as control goes, but it's real flowy through the water.
And what I tripped out is I thought it was mainly about hold, because it's going to wrap, and good for photo shoots. When guys pull in and it's spraying in their face, it's clean because it just wraps. But I asked Ben what his theory was on the rounding rails, and he just said one word: speed.
They are
and I
fast.
was like, what? And I wrapped my head around it, and it should be fast too when the wave is kind of slopey, and then when it gets steep, it should wrap and hold too. And I did it on my boards too, where I rounded the rail, and it's so smooth, especially for drop knee. When you take a drop, it doesn't have that bite and release, that sharp bite and release.
Right.
It's just smooth.
It's smooth and flowy. That's what I've always
holds.
said. Yeah.
And so,
But you can do it like what you did with traditional rail designs and just knock this down and make it more rounded off just with how you sand the rail down, right?
Yeah.
You can make them sharp or you can make them bite. That's the beautiful thing about custom. When you order custom, you can fine tune these details when you order custom, where instead of just buying it off the shelf, you got to. But then you can, like what you do a lot of modifications to boards, and you could find, if you say you find that this rail's too bitey, like you said, you could just take it and sand it down and wet glove it or roll it out and make it, customize it for you.
Yeah,
experiment.
So it's something you guys can do with Jason or myself. Just add that to your custom board, and you can have the traditional pin line and the double rail look and the colors you want, and just round the rail. Just another option. It works pretty good.
So I have a question then. Back in the day, it was 70-30 with the Mach 7s. The 70-30, the bottom rail had so much rail, it created more bite, more control.
More hold,
But it also did what? Create drag?
You know, I've never, I've
Oh, that's right. You're in the 2000s.
He's a young guy.
but Jordan just gave me an old black bottom 7.7 that has this craziest rail ratio I've ever seen. It's almost like a 90 or 80-20, man. It is, there's like hardly any chine on it, just a huge rail face. And I've never gotten to ride one, but I'm really curious about how it would perform and hold. And
It holds.
Yeah, I don't know why things, gradually changed to more of the 60-40 ratios. You know,
I think we have a question from Facebook. Jordan's out there. What's the question?
We've got a really good question here from John Kwan, something that me and Jason have been talking about recently too. How's it, guys? How are channel rails versus rounded rails?
Bitey versus flowy. That's the easy answer. Channel rails really tend to bite and hold into the wave face, and it eliminates a little bit more side slip, and it just bites and holds. That's what I find with channel rails. And when it gets in a rounded rail, it like we were talking about before, it's real smooth and flowy through the wave face. Yeah?
And it still holds.
And it still holds, yeah.
And I say it's also how you create the angle of the rounded rail. You can do it like that. You can do it more sharp and still be round. But
that's what I've noticed is you play a lot with rail angles and stuff. Where my boards are usually, because of how I make and cut my rails, the rail angles on mine are pretty set. I have experimented with, trying to keep the bottom angle and the top angle the same, but most of mine are like, if you look at most rail, this is a different angle than that on my board. And all of my rail angles, my stock rail angles, are all come from my traditional way I shaped it and learned at tubes.
From tubes?
Yeah.
So is yours more angled on the top than the bottom?
Yes.
I love that. And that's what I was going to say too is I base my angles off tubes too, because I just thought it was so sexy and smooth, just the roundness of the top angle.
Yeah.
So no matter what the bottom is, I like to make mine around 45 degrees. I'll even sand it down a little bit after I cut it to round it and just give it that smooth shape. But yeah, so back to rails, actually, did we answer John's question?
I think
more hold. Yeah,
one's more bite. Like the channel rails are more bitey, and you get more hold. I think than rounded rails are more smooth and flowy.
Yeah.
Would you say that the hold, the reason why there's hold is because there's drag?
Yeah.
There might be something to. Well, that's what channels do, right? They create a little bit of drag. And that drag, like the Venturi effect, like you touched on, that Venturi effect has to do with drag.
Yeah.
And that drag creates hold.
Yeah. It can create speed too. Like Koa came to me and he wants to make, his board is going to be 3 inches thick. But he wants the vacuum channel rails. But he brought 2 examples to me. One, they look real similar, but he said one didn't hold, it caused him to slide. And he said one was really good, and then so I was like, why? And I wrapped my head around it, and I created a Venturi vacuum rail for Koa. And so we're going to see how that works. But it's based off bite control, and then creating that water flow where it actually creates speed. So we'll see how that goes. But
it's fun to experiment. It's all about experiments. That's how you get progression and with board design. You just keep building the same thing over and over. There's no progression. You have to experiment. You have to try new ideas, new things, and then you know whether it works or not. Yeah. And then you learn things from that, and then you can build on it, and that's how you progress board design.
Yep. And that's how we learn to balance things out. That's how we learn to kind of find a middle ground too. And that's the fun part about building custom boards. And like Jordan asked, first question was going from the 70s, 80s of crazy experimentation to now how we kind of have cookie cutter boards, but we're able to experiment. And,
they were also trying to figure out all the different materials and construction techniques through all the designs. What works, what doesn't. And I think through the 80s and 90s, a lot of the bigger brands figured all that out. And that knowledge has passed down to where we're at today, where we don't have to experiment too much with materials because they're all proven, and we know Surlyn bottom works. We know the PE skins work.
Yeah.
There's no reason to experiment with any of that. Now it's all about the features of the board and how we can tweak it boards and how that changes performance, right? How the board rides.
Yeah.
That's where we're at today with all these cool, unique ideas and mashing up this idea with that idea and see how it changes the performance of the board.
Yeah. I'm really excited about the bottoms, how we're exploring bottoms now with bodyboards. Before it was just we had the flat bottom or channel, and then we started messing with deck contours, and then quads came out, and then now we're interfacing with the wave face with the bottom. Before it was just rail and outline and top contours, but now the bottom is going to be progression of the sport.
I got a question here. So I'm looking at Blake's boards. Let's take both yellow Riats and compare it on Jason's. Let's look at the nose. Let's look side profile. Look at the nose, because I noticed that Blake's noses are thicker and more blunted. I know Jason likes to thin his noses out more.
Okay.
So take the side profile shot so we can show the camera.
Let's
the
see.
nose design.
You could. Yeah. Let me grab my.
You see a noticeable difference. Take your yellow board there. Take your right.
So
look at that board. That board has a really thick, blunted nose.
Okay,
and it carries the thickness all the way up to almost to the nose.
Okay, well, what Jordan I think is talking most about is what I call the nose cut, and that's what happens on the bottom on the side of the board. Nose rocker for me is on the top side of the board. Yeah. Okay, so how do you shape the bottom of the nose off, and the entry into the board? Like most people just hand shape and cut this back off, and then there's a few systems of how to shape this part of the nose. And traditionally, you look at a lot of old, cool, classic, older boards, they have very blunt noses. And what happens, and this is what I've seen, is that they maybe resolve, let me turn this around this way, from where it's here to where it resolves flat into the boards, usually like 4 to 6 inches back. Like you can see yours, even these, they resolve flat to the flat part of the board within 5 or 6 inches here, probably almost, right?
4 inches.
So one of the big differences of my boards versus a lot of boards out on the market is mine go about 9 inches back before it resolves into flat.
Okay.
And so at least for me, so what the effect is that you do lose some volume out of the front part of the board because you're knocking a little bit more of the foam back on all this, right? But what I feel is that when you go to lean forward on the board, if it's blunted like this, you end up pushing water. And how the water enters the nose of the board, this type's the real blunted off nose, traditional, if it resolves really fast, when you lean forward, it starts to push water. I mean, you look at surfboard, and go back to surfboard design. Surfboards are very curvy, and it's a nice soft entry into the board, right? So that's what I try to do with mine, is create a lot of guys will say, I don't like it, it doesn't feel right in my hands, it's too thin up here, right? I want more, and then they're so used to having the extra volume too, so that you might lose a little bit of volume in the nose of the board when you go to drive, but I think it's just a smoother entry. That's at least my take on the bottom and the nose entry.
Yeah. There's so much to nose rocker that goes into it, and I hand shape it because every customer is different. I shape it to the customer and the board, and like how thick he wants his board and what kind of waves. So this one's thicker because it's my prone board, and I mess with I actually like it flatter, longer up, so you get more speed, because I found when it's more shaved down deeper, it makes the board feel shorter. And then some people say it pushes water, which is interesting, but I believe it's like a smoother transition. It's so interesting, but for me, prone, like I can pull the nose up. I kind of like that flat feel. It's all preference.
Yeah, that's the beauty of how he does it versus I do it versus the next guy. We all have our own takes on what it does.
Yeah, and then
this is what I want. I want this kind of nose. Look at that.
Well, yeah, this is nose rocker. This is what I call nose rocker. Most boards you want just straight flat through here,
Yeah.
Traditional. But then when you get into Dkng, there's definitely some benefits to having a little bit of nose rocker up here, right?
Yeah.
And then, go ahead.
Also, that goes into this board, and this nose rocker is I cut it 4 inches, like my prone board, but then I do a thing called I used to call it a spoon nose, or I call it a convex nose, because that's what basically it is. And I shave it 8 inches down, kind of like Jason's, but just along the edges, more for drop knee, because what it does, I like it for drop knee to feel like a shorter board. It shortens the rail line. It makes the board more responsive versus a longer board, and it helps you not just curl like the traditional kick nose. It helps you curl from curling this way, but when you shave the sides, it helps you in 3 ways, from purling this way, catching a rail on these sides too. And then you still get that traditional flat top. Because I don't know, it's just preference too. Like I don't really like the look of the nose kick and the feel, how it feels like the board has crazy rocker. I like a flat top feel for drop knee and prone. And then this is my answer to nose kick, is to curve out the bottom, and it really feels beneficial than just a traditional nose kick in 3 different aspects.
Well, that's why they like traditional nose dimensions on a drop knee board are a little bit more pulled in than a prone board, because and then because they just didn't want the nose corners to catch in a drop knee, right? And then when you get that nose kick in here on a drop knee board, it adds even less chance that you can dig the nose on. But with how you shape this off, that almost solves the problem without having to put the nose kick.
I'm trying to solve all the problems and put it into one.
Well, it's the experimenting, right? So what's crazy is now you look at this board, and what I do is I do something called a prone nose kick. So if you look at this board, it has just a little bit of nose kick, but it's only up like right in the front part of the board.
Yeah.
So as a prone rider, what I feel is, and we all have different wants and needs in our board, but I found that what this does for me as a prone rider is that when I'm going to take off and I'm really pushing down hard on the nose, it almost flattens out the board. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, right. Because you're pushing down.
I'm pushing down hard when I'm going to catch the wave on the nose, and then when it releases and you go into a steep bottom turn, you have just a little less, because the noses are wider. You're going to have a little less chance of digging that nose in a steep bottom turn. Yeah. So I do this on some prone boards. Just put a little bit of nose kick just in the front. Now on drop knee boards, I can do even more, kind of like what you got there as well.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's all just details. Yeah.
I like what you said earlier about how your board, when you're taking off on the wave, that it kind of goes down, but you know what also goes down? Your lift on the back is also making it go up. So you have that combination of what you're doing on the front and what you're doing in the back. The takeoff zone is...
you're pushing back here with your hips and you're pushing down in the front. And when Jordan and I were just talking about this earlier today, is that he likes boards really flat, and he almost wants when he's taking off for it to go reverse. So that way,
that's like me too.
So that way the board can almost kind of like catch some of the wave and help propel you forward. And then once you get it and you release, then your board goes flat again, right? And then you're taking off like a missile.
Jordan, in Facebook world, man, you got the crazy. You need to come here. You need to be in the studio next time. All right.
Cool. All right, yeah. So it's pretty cool stuff.
That was good.
How long are we at? Where are we at? 1 hour?
Like that.
Time to close up. Closing remarks, guys.
Well, this is awesome. It's so cool to kind of bounce ideas and share ideas and things.
Yeah, it was cool to hear your perspective on shaping and your designs and the concepts behind it, and then mine, and how they kind of coincide, but they're different too.
That's the beauty
of it. That's what
makes
makes us unique, and customers can try both and find just
experiment and find what works for you. That's the secret of the custom game. Even stock games, you and that's the way you build knowledge by riding stock boards. We touched a little bit on this earlier, is that you got to get out there and you got to try to ride different things. That's the only way to become knowledgeable about what works for you and what doesn't. If you just ride a clip crescent standard channel board, and that's what I've always ridden, that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that if you know that works for you. But it's always fun to try something new and different and have different feel, right? I mean, obviously this is a traditional shaped prone board, but then, my tombstones are just a whole nother game. And
it's like a Pipo board.
It's so Pipo inspired, definitely. That's what
this
is.
Have so much fun.
And this is just a wave catching machine. It's all about planing surface, and I usually just ride this on smaller days, and it drop knees, you can stand up on it, but it has a really straight line on the rail line. There's hardly any curve to it, so you lose a little bit of maneuverability, but man, these things are just missiles in the water. It's amazing because they have such a straight rail line.
That's the Walls killer. It's the Walls killer.
Anything like chest high and under, it's just a machine. It's so much fun. I really love these on smaller days. They're great little boards.
I want to say when you try like stock boards or any board, take notes. As a bodyboarder, take notes what works, what size is ideal for you first of all, and then what you like about your stock board, what you don't like. Take notes and start to educate yourself, because like surfers, like they know everything about they order custom boards all the time. They know how thick they want it, they know how wide, they know what rocker does. So as bodyboarders, let's step it up and, you know, let's just educate ourselves. It'll only advance the sport, it'll progress your riding, and it'll just push bodyboarding to the next level.
Yeah, ride your friends' boards, especially if it's different than what you ride. I think that's a great way to experiment. Hey, you're out in the water, just switch up boards and then see the feel of how his board rides versus yours. And then you start getting a reference to what different things do.
Yeah, just don't crease your friend's board. and if you do, you know, replace it or throw him some cash or something.
Or order him a custom from one of us.
But yeah.
I gotta say, it's really crazy is that you come from California, a whole ocean apart from Hawaii. You guys' designs are totally different, but the concepts are similar. The purposeful of the design is the same. And so what I'm going to do, guys, and I encourage all of you as well, go back, watch the video again, take notes like what Blake said. And I'm going to take so many of your ideas. I already did. But I'm going to take some more, and I'm going to take this design, I'm going to combine it together, and we're going to have just a crazy mix.
Gonna have a baby.
I'm gonna have
Jason and Blake.
That's the beauty, is mashing up all these ideas and experimenting with them. That's what custom boards are all about.
Yeah.
I gotta ask. What's your schedule on boards? I'm sure the audience out there want to order right away with you. What's your waiting period so far?
I can usually right now, within 3 weeks, I can have
Whoa!
it shipped. Yeah. About 3 weeks, yeah.
Let's see if we can beat that timeline.
Mine is about a month.
Oh man, a month. All right.
Demand. This guy's in high demand. Maybe I'm not in high demand. Yeah, I mean, we all juggle things. I don't, you know, you do other things, and as well, I do other things. So I'm not. This is just one thing that I do. You know, I have other projects. You know, I do a lot of architecture and woodworking and stuff that's even outside of all of the board business.
That's what I was gonna say. Like I'm a father, and the behind the scenes stuff. You know, posting, taking pictures, talking to the customers. I think I do more behind the scenes stuff than I actually do shaping.
Yeah, there's so much. There's probably more time that goes into figuring out what the rider wants than there is actually time building the board.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time.
It does,
for me at least.
Oh yeah,
so,
that's one of the. I think that's what people don't realize, is how much time there is just figuring out what the customer wants.
Yeah, and I put 110% into each board for my customers, and that's why it takes me a little longer. I wish I could just pump it out like stock boards and just.
I don't want to build cookie cutter boards. I never have. I never want to build cookie cutter boards. I want to build cool, unique, individual boards.
Yeah, I pour my passion into it, my heart into it, and I know you do too, because I look at your boards and it's works of art. Each board is there's so much going on that it amazes me. So
hey, we all influence each other. We all pull from each other and that only makes us better. Yeah.
I'm wondering, am I the most difficult order form that you've ever experienced so far with all my ideas? Because it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. I have more ideas from Jason, and I'm going to put it into yours. Get ready.
Okay.
Well, that's great news. At the 3-week waiting period, 1 month, those are all perfect timelines. Got a lot of winter left, folks, so get your orders in right away. Just wait for me first. Get my order in first, and then you guys can come after me, because I need another board right away. But closing, you said your closing remarks. Do you have any closing remarks?
Oh, this has just been awesome. I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of talk ideas and share this with everybody out there. It was just a great opportunity for us to come and talk about board design and share everything. Yeah, it's a great time.
I just want to thank Ivan for putting this together. It's his idea.
It was his idea. Good stuff. Yeah.
Thank you, Jason.
Long overdue. You and I have had plenty of conversations, but this has been above and beyond anything we've ever done, for sure. Yeah,
we've met a long time ago in Waihewa. We had lunch together, just talked about shaping. But I also want to thank Jesse.
Thank you, Jesse.
Without you, this wouldn't have been possible. I want to thank my friend Joe Jordan from Roots Jiu-Jitsu for allowing us to meet here and have this awesome place, and Jordan for coming out, manning the Facebook Live and asking awesome questions. But yeah, and thank you guys for tuning in and just being a part of it. And let's raise the tide together by supporting other companies, supporting each other. Let's just move forward in positivity and not tear each other down, and just have fun in the water. And we vote with our dollar. We we got to learn to show love, you know, by spending our money and not buying surf stuff and just investing in bodyboard companies. And that's all I got to say.
Man, I'm looking forward to riding these boards and getting into some deep barrels.
Oh, Deep Barrels, I want to thank Junior from Deep Barrel for sponsoring this with some awesome clothes that he sponsored us with and blessed us with. So thank you, Junior. And
Yeah, Junior, I seen him out the other day with us at Life Leftovers. This guy makes t-shirts, designs how to get into deep barrels, and he knows how to get into them as well. He's got great, amazing style, and thank you again, Junior.
Yeah, it's great to support the industry, and I have a screen printer guy who's a writer, and he does trades with me for all of my screen printing. I build him boards, and he does all my screen printing. He's been a long-time friend, even since the Tubes days. I was making him boards way back then.
Is that Anxious Energy?
Yeah, that's my friend Jim, and he's down at the BSR pool, and he gets to experiment with board designs in the pools, so I get some feedback from that too. So it's good to get out there and ride different waves. I think that I don't want to get back into more stuff. You're trying to wrap this up.
He's awesome too, though. But yeah.
Yeah, and also I'd like to thank my sponsors, Ryan from Vector Systems, and also Behemoth, Curran Cotter up there in, where is he from? He's in Europe, man. He hooks me up with these incredible leashes, and so, yeah, it's awesome. Thank you guys again for supporting me as well. Behemoth!
Now get out there and go catch some waves.
See you out there on the North Shore! This is Ivan Okuda. Peace!